Welcome to our webinar, Power Networking for Job Search and Career Success, which is part of our Get That Job webinar series here at the Champaign Public Library. My name is Jordan Neal, and I am the career librarian here at the library. So thank you all for joining us. So for the latest library news and updates, please visit our website, champaign.org, or you can follow us on social media. You can email us at librarian@champaign.org, or you can chat with us just by visiting the homepage of our website. The library is open, and we're also still offering our curbside services. So again, please visit our website or just give us a call for more information. Moving on to a couple of Zoom features available to you that might help during this webinar. There are some buttons or icons at the bottom of your Zoom screen, depending on your device. On the far left, you have the option that control your sound or your speaker. Moving to the right and within the center window includes a chat and raised hand option. You can use these options to ask questions or share any comments. There might be some opportunities for engagement during the webinar. Our presenter will be pausing for questions as well. We invite you to type your question into the chat or raise your hand, and we can unmute you if you prefer to speak and ask your question. I would also like to remind everyone that our webinars are recorded, so please be mindful when you are sharing those questions and comments. Finally, I'd like to introduce our presenter. As usual, we invite you to read their entire bio on our website, but Susan Barbee is a certified leadership and career coach and former HR consultant. She provides professional guidance as people define their brand, figure out what's next, and come up with their professional roadmap. Thank you for joining us today, Susan, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Jordan. And I'd also like to welcome everyone to our workshop. I love to be here, and I love to be talking about this topic because I believe that networking is one of the most powerful skills that you can use in your approach as you build your career campaign. So whether or not you're used to or even like networking, or are an introvert and have a lot of trepidation, which I hear a lot from people, you will be more effective when you take a more structured approach to the process, which will also remove any of the fear factor that you might be feeling. We'll be talking about all the tools and techniques to do just that in our presentation tonight. So before I begin, I'd like to encourage you, anyone here in the group, to do a little networking here together. So feel free to put your LinkedIn link in chat and connect with one another. As you'll see, opportunities to network are all around us, and all it takes is to become more aware of the potential in everyday life, as well as taking a more structured approach. So we're going to cover all of this today. So let's get started. So in today's agenda, we're going to be talking about 5 different topic areas. First, we'll start with reframing networking. This has to do with how do you feel about networking? What's your perspective? And by really looking at if what your fears or thoughts are valid, it can help unlock the potential for you so that you're not held back by something that might not even be true. So let's take a look at that for a few minutes. And then from there, we also want to know why does networking benefit you? You know, the what's in it for me kind of approach. If you understand that, again, you'll be more open to it and embrace it as a very important tool for making a bigger impact in whatever you're trying to do today in your career campaign. And so when we talk about networking, part of what is about is having a confident presentation about yourself. What do you say when you meet someone? Or how do you present yourself? What does that look like? That's where a lot of people's trepidations are. But the good news is we can learn how to do that with some basic branding techniques. And also we'll have a chance to look at some actual 2-minute commercials, I like to call them, and give you a template to work on one for yourself. So branding is at the cornerstone of really having a confident presentation. And of course, when we talk about networking, we have to talk about your network. So who do you have in your network today? And how can you branch out for that to build your network even bigger? So we're going to be talking about finding and then building your network. And finally, creating a structured approach is a great way, again, to take out that fear factor and allow you to be more confident as you go forward, because you're going to know what to do and you're going to know what to say. So that's why I'm excited to talk to you about the power of networking. There's a lot to share, and so let's get into it now. So like I said, one of the first places to start is how we think about it, how we feel about it. And if we look at that, it can help us kind of open up and allow ourselves to move forward and embrace this important tool. So I can't tell you how many times my clients say, I really dread networking. Everything else sounds good here, but I'm very shy and I just don't know what to say. And so sometimes it turns out that this person might be an introvert who's uncomfortable with small talk. And that's, a lot of people are like that. And that's one reason they have trepidation around this. And so to them, I say, practice and preparation is one of the most important tools that you can use and techniques to become more comfortable and therefore more confident. So we're going to see opportunities to do that as we go along here. But first, let's just look at some of the common things that I hear from people on that left column here, if you can see the screen.
Hi, Susan. I'm so sorry to interrupt you. We're only seeing a Zoom. We're not seeing the presentation. It just says open Zoom and a question mark.
Oh, okay. Let's see if we can fix that. Resume share. Does that help?
I still only see open zoom.us question mark. So you might have to stop share and then reshare.
Okay, let me do that. Thanks for letting me know. How's that?
Yes, it's supposed to say gain a new perspective.
It does.
Yes, we can see it now. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you for letting me know. So on the left side of the screen that hopefully now you can see, you'll see a list of uncomfortable thoughts and ideas about what networking is. So let's look at the first one. People sometimes say, I'm afraid to impose on other people or my friends. You know, they don't really want to hear from me, do they? So that feeling is very common. And so when you look over at the right column, to shift your thinking to the comfortable perspective on that, is most people like to be asked and are flattered to be asked to help. So think of it for yourself. If somebody has ever said to you, hey, could I get your advice on this? Or is wondering what you think about this? It usually is something that you're, oh, sure, I'd love to help you. Some people don't, but for the most part, it's true that we do like to help each other. And it is flattering because often what you're asking someone is something that they have a lot of expertise on or know about. So I think that's really an important place to start. Another thing I hear is, I do not like asking for a job. If I talk to somebody, that makes me feel really uncomfortable. And so the good news there is that one of the most important things to know about networking is that you should never come out and ask for a job. The true purpose is other things. It's information, and it's also getting someone else to talk to, getting a referral. And so if you ask for a job within a networking meeting that you set up or a casual conversation, it feels out of place. And sometimes it really can work against you. So no need to ask for a job because that's something that you actually don't want to do. Another thing I hear is, I don't like cold calling. So a couple things about that I can tell you. First, I don't think anyone does. I've heard of many salespeople who say, you know, I'm very comfortable with selling, but I also don't like cold calling. So first of all, you rarely would just call someone these days. Maybe, 5 or 10 years ago, people would call, but now you pretty much start with typically an email, but some kind of written approach. And that's something to know right away. But the other thing that's part of this that can make the fear factor go away is that if you start with your current network and get referrals from people you know, which is generally where we do start, you're going to be having what we call warm leads, not cold calls, but replace that idea with warm leads. oh, Jane suggested you would be a great person for me to talk to as I'm trying to transition to my next job or look for the next role. I'm looking to make a transition. And I'm wondering if you'd be willing to just spend 20 minutes with me talking to me about that. So that's a warm lead. And so that's something too, I can assure you that once you have your scripts and way to approach people, you will feel anything but like you're cold calling. So that's something that you can take right off the table. And the final thing is, I don't know what to say. So maybe again, you're that introvert who feels uncomfortable with small talk, or you're just not sure how to start such a conversation. So another piece of good news is one of the things that you're going to walk away with tonight is a script and some sample questions that you can ask in advance for feedback and advice. So I'm a true believer in scripting, and like I said before, planning and preparation is really going to be the most important thing for feeling comfortable. And that's a good example of that. So I'm going to show you some color by number approaches later. And I think you'll agree that you're going to feel more comfortable once you know about them. So it's really all about starting here with shifting our perspective. And that starts with challenging the way that we're thinking and creating an understanding and comfort level. So now let's take a look at how networking benefits you. And I like to talk about 5 different ways. There's probably more than that, but these are the ones I think are most important. So when you think about networking, there's no doubt that one of the main reasons you do it is to tap the hidden job market. And I don't know if you have heard of that here, and it sounds kind of mysterious, but what it really is it represents 75% of how all jobs are found before they're even advertised through postings. So that is really always a surprise. Even to me today, I always feel that that's really just an amazing figure showing how this is so important. It's a network. Find new people to talk to so that you can continually get access to those jobs that might not even have been created by the time you've talked to someone, or the person just hasn't had time to really post it and recruit for it. So what is the hidden job market? Hidden job market can be really just seen as unpublished jobs, and most jobs actually, and that they're found before they're advertised. And you find them by utilizing your network. So all of these things we're going to show you how to do. Why is this important? Because often unpublished positions are created at the time of an informal networking conversation or a formal informational interview. If you're talking to a hiring manager or somebody with influence who has access to that hiring manager. And so really, when you think about that, every hiring manager is looking for solutions to their problems. And so we on the outside might not know what those problems that company or leader is facing. And so perhaps a direct report isn't doing a good job, but the manager feels stuck because they haven't had time to recruit, or they don't really know what they're looking for the next time. So here's one of the real tricks here. If you can show them how you can solve their problems through a real clear understanding of your branding, and we'll get to that when we talk about branding, they will consider hiring you, whether or not they have a position open at that time. So all of the things that we're going to talk about, when you really take them together and implement them as an orchestrated strategy, if you will, really are very actionable tips that really make a difference to getting in front of those influencers. So on a related note, the second benefit of networking is connecting with those hiring decision makers, those influencers. That's what a lot of networking is about. And so you really want to get referrals to those people. So again, we're going to give all these tips soon, but that's really the key thing. So first, let's just look at how somebody in an organization actually does use networking to find people. So they might post the job in addition, but also they use an internal network, and you'll see these 3 bullets here, an employee network, and a personal network. So the internal network, sometimes HR works hand in glove with a hiring manager. to advance an internal candidate. But the two places where you in particular, by networking and expanding your network so that you can get to know people within various organizations and maybe your specific target organizations, if you've gotten that far, is the employee and personal network. So the employee network we probably all have heard about, where the company posts jobs internally and then employees can refer people. Sometimes they actually have incentives to do that. So that's where, if you know that employee who works at that company, they are incentivized to reach out to you and let you know about a job. You have access to the job. Personal network, candidates are sourced through trusted colleagues in other organizations, through HR or that hiring manager. So if you have access to any of these contacts, you have access to that hidden job. So again, this is a very inspiring reason to continue to expand and grow your network. So we've talked about one of the most important benefits is to get access to the important people who have the power to hire you. But also another key reason that we network, and especially in informational interviewing, is to get answers to our questions, is to get information about whatever it is that you're wanting to know. And a lot of this will certainly depend on where you are at in your career or job campaign. If you're just starting out, you newly graduated from college and you're kind of getting, you're saying, well, I'm not sure if it should be this field or that role. You've got a lot of questions. Maybe you're somebody that's making a career pivot. You've been playing a role for quite a while, and now you might want to do a little bit of a shift, or you're just looking for that right company to work for. And a lot of times that's true too, is people, one of the top things I hear is, I want to work for a company whose values and whose culture aligns better with my own. So all of these things are yours to know about through these types of questions and talking to the right people. So anything from, what's the industry trends? What are the needs and opportunities? And remember, a few minutes ago, I said, if you can show someone that influencer, if you can solve their problems by understanding what the needs are, you will really impress them and go along farther in their opinion of you. Another thing you want to look for is, you might be looking, how can I gauge my marketability and qualifications for the role that I'm interested in? Could I qualify? Do I have what it takes? And along those lines, getting strategies for gaining traction in a role that you do think you could qualify for. It could be anything from get a certification or join this organization. They might have a lot of tips like that that really get you in the inside track. And finally, like I said, finding the right companies to target can often be one of the main reasons you want to network and ask questions if you're somebody farther, especially in your career, because you might be looking for that right culture. Maybe you're looking for some changes in the organization where they now need something. They have a change and you want to go in there and try to, show that you can help them with it. And it could be as simple as, I want a company that's growing. What's their revenue, and who are those companies? Of course, you can find that information out from other databases, but it's just another good reason to talk to people, even if you supplement that with some of your own research. So my tip here on the screen, as you'll see, is always listen for and ask about opportunities and pain points to help you form your search strategy. So like I said before, you're not asking for job opportunities, but more, what's going on at the company? What's happening? And, how can I help? So the fourth thing I want to talk about here out of the 5 is another kind of questions a lot of people ask us just to get career advice. Now, this is especially true if you're looking for, if you kind of know where you're going, you have a direction, you'll want to ask questions sometimes related to that direction. So again, this could change depending on where you're at in your own career, but you could be looking for a sounding board for your career goals and strategies. Feedback on a resume and your marketing materials, such as LinkedIn. An approach for reaching target companies or specific people, and just advice on job search strategies or tools for your targeted roles or fields. Now, one of the unsaid things here is the more you start to understand your network, who you know, who could be helpful for you, is seeing who the kind of person is that you can ask some of these questions of. So you would want to consider that. And we'll talk later in the appendix, actually, of this presentation. I give you a kind of activity for identifying your network, and then, identifying what kind of person they are and how they can help you. So once you know that, you can use them, ask the right person for career advice or any other questions. And finally, something I've been kind of hinting at as we've gone along is one of the main reasons, besides getting access to that person that you want to talk to and getting information, is getting new referrals. So that's always the last question. So one of my top tips here is wait until the end of the conversation before you request a referral. And that can even be done in these ad hoc or casual networking conversations, not just in these formal, informational interviews where you set up a time. So it could be just, if you know what you're going to say, you've planned and you've prepared, and we'll help you with some of the messaging here tonight. Then you should be able to have a version for those conversations too, and say, I have one more question for you. Can you suggest, now that you kind of know what I'm looking to do here, can you suggest anyone that might be helpful for me to talk to? So that's always the last question. So it could be anyone in your target fields who has insider knowledge, and it could be anyone in target companies or any other kind of person that can help you. So now that we know about all the benefits of networking, and hopefully we've even taken away that fear that you might be experiencing, are there any questions or comments that you might have at this time before we move on to our next topic? So if you do, as Jordan was saying, you can put a note in chat or raise your hand, and she will help, unmute you or read out your question. So feel free to do that at this point. Okay, so if nothing's coming to mind now, hopefully this because we've given you such good information. Please feel free to put something in chat or raise your hand at any time, even if it's something we talked about earlier. I want everyone to really feel comfortable getting the answers to their questions.
Yeah, there are no questions at this time.
Okay, thanks. All right, well, now we're going to move into, I think, one of the most exciting topics is branding. And so, we've been kind of painting the picture here about how, why you want to go through all this, talk to people. Well, knowing what you want to say and being really clear about what you're saying is half of it. So it's great to do all the things we talked about and all the things we're going to talk about, but this is really the cornerstone. And again, we were talking before about feeling more comfortable, and that leads to more confidence. This is really a confidence booster. So let's take a look at this. So the focus of branding is, as you might know, understanding yourself and how you can bring value to others. So I've mentioned a few times, understand what's going on in the industry, understand what the pain points are of a company or a hiring manager, and then the better you understand your brand and the value you bring, the better you can say, I can help with that. So that's where this comes in handy. So the clarity that you feel is going to make all the difference in your networking. You're going to feel bolder to reach out. If you run into somebody more just all around you or in some kind of networking event, when we get back on site or even in Zoom, you're going to be much more confident to step forward. And you can also use these ideas in your written marketing materials, another word for saying your resume and your LinkedIn profile. Those are marketing materials. You're selling something and you want to know, you want the person who's reading it, your audience, to know how you're going to help them. How are you going to solve their problems? How do you bring value? That's really what it's all about. So with that in mind, let's look now at writing a value statement and a positioning statement to make it so much easier and to feel a lot more confident. So we start with a value statement, sort of the cornerstone. It's really showing what you have to offer. What are you offering? You know, if you just think of it like that, that's as simple as it is. And so value statement is another way to say brand, but let's just use the word value statement for now. So this is really all about understanding and conveying what's behind your successes. I like to call those your key success factors. And that is, again, what problems do you solve easily and what has made you successful when you look back at your achievements, you know, the ones we put on our resume, or when you talk in an interview about examples of how you've done something and made a difference. Those are all your achievements. What's behind them? There's a lot of rich information there, material to mine. So here's what's in a value statement. 4 components. Your role, what do you do? How you add value? How do you get results that benefit the organization, the client, whoever your target audience is? How do you do it? This is if you have room, but I like to call this your secret sauce. And what that really is your top first or second, it could be 1 or 2, top strengths that really are behind your successes. And then finally, your target audience. So these are things that we do for any kind of branding. What do you do? How are you going to help someone in your target audience? So let's look at 2 examples. The first one is shorter, and it doesn't necessarily include all of the components because it's written or it's meant for a verbal networking conversation. And so you want it to be very casual. You don't want to look like you've memorized it and you're stumbling over words. Have it short and easy to deliver because they can always ask you questions. And that's exactly even one reason in a networking situation when they say, tell me, what do you do? Which is the classic question, right? What do you do? This is another way to answer that. That just gives a lot more dynamic interplay, more opportunity for a meaningful conversation. So here you go. So what do you do? Well, I'm a master storyteller who brings awareness about global issues to K-12 school students. So there's a couple things in there they might ask you about, but that's short and you can follow up with more, meat about it. Oh, where do you teach? Or what kind of global issues are you interested in it? Or, something like that. Or what background do you have in storytelling? I hear about storytelling all the time these days. I'm so interested in it. So who knows? It can go in a lot of directions, right? And then the other one, this is more of a literal plugging in those 4 components that you can see on your screen: your role, how you add value, how you do it, and who you do it for. This is how that looks. So this is probably something more in a resume, but you can shorten it. So I'm an HR leader who makes improvements that help organizations operate at high levels of productivity by building structures so people can give their best and like what they do. So you'll notice several things. The role is a role and not a title. It doesn't say I'm an HR vice president or an HR business partner. It just says I'm a leader. So you're giving some important information there. You're saying I'm higher up in the food chain. I'm not like a beginner. So that gives some information. And then you're showing that your target is just generally organizations. For this person, they probably didn't need to say I work for nonprofits or, I work for financial services firms. They're probably open to any organization. And then their value is that they make improvements that improve productivity. So if you think about it, anytime you can save a company money by streamlining and productivity and finding ways to save is going to be one of the top ways you bring value. Another top way, and so these are the top 2, is you produce revenue. So since a company and even nonprofit organizations need to be viable from a business standpoint, whenever you can say that you're doing that the real purpose of what you do, like say you're an IT person, you're really helping with productivity. You're keeping people working so that they can be not only productive, but more efficient with the tools that you can give them. The real benefit is you're saving the company money. So a great opener here for more questions, again, for that engaging networking conversation, so that it just sort of takes on that life of its own. I would want to ask this person, oh, that's interesting. So when you say building structures, what exactly do you mean by that? And so this person might answer things like, well, I create processes to create smoother, efficient procedures, and I also create new programs so that people are more motivated. Could be training, mentoring, so that everybody's really involved and are motivated to give their best. Those are a couple examples, and you never know where the conversation will go from there. So that value statement is going to lead to something that you can use in your networking conversations. Especially a more formal version is for an informational interview, sometimes called referral networking, when you have a 20-minute scheduled talk with somebody. But it can also be condensed and made into a verbal purpose. So keep that in mind when you look at this. But let's just go with the more formal approach right now. So we've looked at the value statement, and that sort of is the cornerstone of a commercial. It's called a 1 to 2 minute positioning statement, a commercial, an elevator speech, a 2-minute profile, whatever it is. This is what you use when you can use it in interviews, but you can also use it in networking. So it starts with your value statement, and it's all built on where you're going next. And I'm going to show you an actual example, and I'm going to read it for you in a moment. But the key thing to know is, where are you going next? And when you figure that out, you don't have to know everything, but that's what you're selling. You're out there marketing yourself. You're talking to people. You're looking for that next job or the next career or whatever, or the next client. So when you're talking about what you're offering today going into the future. So therefore, you might give some of your experience, but it's a mere summary, and you're going to kind of cherry pick what's most relevant to where you're going next. And if you're somebody that's just wants to continue in the same swim lane and doesn't want to make a move, then that's going to be easier for you, but you still just want to summarize. So again, you have up to 2 minutes, and then people are not going to listen carefully after that. People's attention will wander. They'll think about what they're having for lunch, wondering what the weather's like. So it's just important to be really, really succinct. The next thing to add are any relevant key strengths, only a few. And then for the longer version, for a more formal opportunity, throwing in a quick 30 to 45 second illustrative story that kind of provides the proof of what you're saying, your value is, and what you're doing is really helpful too, to keep it interesting. It's the anecdote. So very, very much suggested. And then finally, the segue to your question. So we talked about, you go into these meetings with people that you set up, asking them questions, or you can do a more casual approach in the stand-up version, which is, hey, I have, what I'm looking to do next is this, and I have a few questions, and you can do that too in more of a casual way. But now I'm going to read you, and again, you'll have this later when Jordan sends you a copy of the PowerPoint. So everything I'm talking about and showing you, you will be able to access later. And I think that's really important. So you will have this on hand for yourself later. But let me read it to you as if I'm in, I've set up an informational interview with somebody, and we have 20 minutes. And so after we set the table in the beginning, which is, thank you for meeting with me. I really appreciate your time. I know we said we had 20 minutes here. Is that still good for you? Kind of setting the table, and everything's set. Then you say, so would you mind if I just give a little bit of a background about myself before I ask you the questions that I mentioned that I had? And of course they're going to say, sure, go ahead. So this is where you do that 2-minute story that bakes in the value statement, a little bit about your background related to the future direction, that illustrative storytelling, and then what you're looking to do next. And in this particular case, this client was changing roles. So she was going from a publishing job, which is actually part of the story, but focusing on the HR pieces of it that were most interesting. So it was HR and operations. So it's tricky, but this is a good example to know that this person wasn't doing HR up until this moment. So here we go. So do you mind if I tell you a little bit about myself first before I ask you my questions? So what I'm good at is I make improvements that help organizations operate at high levels of productivity and performance. In my career, I've straddled HR and operations roles, always with an eye towards setting up structures so people can give their best and like what they do. An example of this, there was a time when I was a hiring manager in a publishing house that produced high volumes of books. To meet demands, I developed big picture organization and workflows, identifying and resolving gaps and breakdowns. The results that we got were really strong. I crafted a well-oiled machine capable of producing about 50 concurrent books. And along the way, I improved our hiring methods. I wrote a help guide to get people up and running faster on the job, and collaborated on a database so that people could share their resources and find the people they needed to do the books much faster. To make sure people flourished, I made sure that people were cross-trained and given stretch assignments, and there was a career track that people could grow into. So our work system saved about $500,000 in staff costs and helped us produce 250 books a year. But I'm especially proud of that we were successful in improving performance and productivity while keeping employees engaged. So what I'm looking to do next is explore opportunities in HR, either in-house or contract, where I can help improve productivity and performance while nurturing the people. And I'm looking for companies that. And then you say, and now that's actually why I wanted to meet with you today, because I'm wondering if you know companies that are small entrepreneurial companies whose needs are growing, but perhaps they don't have the resources or leadership to make it happen. So then you ask your questions. So that's how it works. And there is work to do this and self-understanding. The good thing is I'm going to be giving you your own positioning statement activity to do after the session. And this is just going to be a template. It's going to prompt you through a value statement. It will repeat those components so you can work on it until you feel good about it. And then you can complete it also following the template that I'm going to give you. So really it's, again, color by number. And once you have it down, you can always change it as you go along. If you're somebody who's still trying to figure things out, it's okay. Just be where you are today. Start with where you are now. Write what makes sense for today. And maybe after you do some informational interviewing and talking to some other people in your network, you're going to go back and make some changes. And so it could even be that you've decided, of the 3 options you were talking to people about, you've decided you're going to go with the first one. So whatever it is, this is a living, breathing thing. And don't worry if you don't feel like you have it right the first time. The more you use it and practice it, the more comfortable you get with it, and the more you're going to own it and use it and slice and dice it for different uses. So again, practice and preparation creates confidence going in. So those are really important things. And I love to just see it's very practical. It isn't just hoping you feel confident. Even if you're someone that does power poses, there are ways to feel confident sometimes before an interview. But this is really foundational work that really you almost can't go wrong with if you spend the time to really understand what you're offering, how you solve people's problems, and bring value so that you can tell others about it. So that's going to be the branding portion of our presentation. There's a lot here. And again, you'll have some materials that you'll be sent by Jordan after the presentation. But any questions, comments at this time in chat, or raise your hand if you'd like to say it aloud, that it's just easier for you.
We're taking it in, Susan. I don't think there are any questions at this time.
Okay, no worries at all. So feel free to come up with them as they arise later if that happens. So let's move forward. And we've talked about using your network. Well, now let's talk about how do you find your network? Where is it? How do you build it? What's that about? So let's shift our focus here so that you can use it for formal and informal purposes. So I've come up with 4 ways that I want to talk here about expanding your network. So how do you do that? Well, the first thing you do is you start with who you know today, your current network, by looking at who is in your inner circle. So it's sort of the classic way to network. And if you can see this, my screen here, you can see that you start there and then you get through referrals, you get referred to other people. So the inner circle might or might not include your friends, but then you get referred to other people like your allies and colleagues. Now, they could also be kind of part of your inner circle too. People you already know is what this is. And then acquaintances, acquaintances, but then you might not start with them. So it's sort of a process. And really, if you think about it, it's just very simple. Your current network is all around you. And it's actually, you've been building it throughout your life, or at least your professional years, or even starting with college if you went to college, through jobs, through organizations, through neighborhoods, through friends, through family, you name it, you know people. So whether you formalize them with a LinkedIn connection or not, that doesn't necessarily matter. LinkedIn is a very critical tool for networking, but there also is good old-fashioned conversations. Those can't be beaten. In some ways, they can be more powerful. So, you don't want to just depend on LinkedIn, because when you meet someone or you set up a time to talk to them and they can see you and you can see them through Zoom or face-to-face, it's very powerful. A lot can happen there. So anyway, to answer who is in your inner circle, we start with from the inside out. So as we say, identify who you already know, and these contacts become a springboard for finding new contacts. So I've mentioned that I have an exercise in the appendix. It's called Find Your Network Exercise. So feel free to use that as a way to really think through who makes sense for you to contact to start these conversations. So now when we talk about expanding your network, we start with who you know, but then we want to go out from there. So to expand your network, you want to find the connections to hiring managers and other decision makers. So to really understand how that works, take a look at this diagram, if you will, and you'll see some things that you understand and maybe some things not. So maybe you're starting with your allies and colleagues here. Those are people you've worked with. They're more professional contacts. Maybe you got referred to some of them. Then you see this mavens and connectors. So mavens and connectors are people, especially the mavens, let's start with that. They're people that really know your field and the trends. Before we were talking about finding the person, if you want to find out about a field or an industry, find the maven. So that person who just is an expert, knows what's going on, what are the pain points in the industry today, what's happening, because there's a lot of changes in a lot of industries. And today especially, there's some pertinent immediate things going on that probably will resolve in some way or another. But that's important to understand too, if you're looking for a job today, is to understand how to get into that field or what's going on today. Really important. Then connectors are people that we probably all know, and we just haven't thought of it that way. Those are those just natural networkers, people that know everyone, so to speak. And so almost everyone knows people like that. And it could be people outside of your desired industry or target job, and that's okay. You want to really be very broad, and they know people probably who are in your target field and industry. So that could be the questions that you ask them. This is what you're looking for? They're probably going to know who to call, who's going to know, or somebody or a couple people who they can recommend you to. And then you look at the influencers. That's the next. So they could lead you to those people who know, who have influence in organizations. And then the ultimate kind of bullseye is the decision maker, the hiring decision maker. So that's really how it works. So when you look at your own network through the exercise, or just even if you want to just think about it, who do you know that can fill some of these roles so that you can target your questions to them, the right questions to the right people. And then that last question is always, can you suggest someone for me to talk to? So you never know in your current network who can get you access to the people that are going to help you the most. So it's kind of almost a game, if you will. All right, so number 3 of number 4, steps to expand your network. So I've kind of mentioned this idea, but really understanding that making connections all around you, even if it isn't the referral approach, which is, a time-honored way, getting referred to somebody, it's also, you might know people that you can start with, and maybe people that you don't know as well, that might be more powerful than you think. So you can take a look at this list, but in addition to, networking for referrals, you can meet people at networking events, at video conferences, and staying open to opportunities as they arise in the Starbucks line, or just that impromptu, webinar you've joined, and that you're, connecting with people, and that can turn into something later. You go back and look at them and go, hey, we were at this webinar together and I see we have something in common, or I was actually having questions that maybe you could help me with. Would you like to, would you mind getting together for 20 minutes for an offline conversation? So that's how those things work. Impromptu, look for those opportunities, and then you'll jump on them when you see them. So again, open up your perspective. The 2 I want to really focus on here briefly, though, is the first one and the second one. So reopening connections to people from the past. The reason I put this here is because so many times I hear people say, I've lost touch with my network. I got that last job. I used to be so good at it. And then I got the last job. I got too busy and I have fallen out of touch with people. And I'm sure some of you here have also experienced that. And so, first of all, that's very common. And remember, the other person or the other people that you're wanting to reconnect with, that you've fallen out of touch with, also fell out of touch with you. So since this is such a common comment, you can just imagine and guess that they also got really busy. So it's not personal that they haven't reached out to you lately. It's just we all get very busy. So the other reason it's important to look at these contacts is that they might be more inclined to help you. So you already have a relationship, and so you don't have to start from scratch with them. So that's a really important resource. And again, be bold, make the reach out and make the connection. Hey, I was wondering if you'd be interested in, just reconnecting. I'd love to talk with you again, seeing what you're up to, make it about them too. And I also noticed, I was also wanting to ask you a few questions if you have some time. So in that 20 minutes, you might rejigger your script, which I'm going to give you shortly, for how you talk to them. The first 10 minutes, if you have 20, is going to be, how have you been doing? Tell me about what you've been doing. And then be very brief about yourself, because you want to spend the time more. I mentioned I had a few questions. I was wondering if I see that you're working for this company, and I really am interested in finding out more about them. Would you mind just telling me what it's like to work there? And then at the end, you ask them, can you suggest anyone else to talk to? The second one I wanted to mention, which a lot of people overlook, is to not overlook your acquaintances. We tend to think we want to find people who are in our target industry or our target companies, or in the roles we play or want to play. That's true, but you want to broaden your approach to include what's often called weak ties. These are the people that are in different industries, roles, and fields, but that's the reason they're interesting. They travel in different circles, so they lead you to different contacts. Consider 60% of job seekers are likely to get a job through a weak time. Excuse me. So that statistic right there is enough to hopefully make you a true believer. Sorry. One more thing I want to point out here before we move on to LinkedIn, which is, something we, of course, are going to have to talk about here, right? For expanding your network, is once you make these new contacts or refresh them, look for ways to make a more meaningful connection. Because how many times, well, on LinkedIn, that's an easy one, where we say, hey, would you like to connect? And then the path stops there. It goes cold. That happens to all of us. So always keep in mind, what can you do to take it a step further? So, and a clear one is what can I do to explore if they would be willing to talk to me for 20 minutes with an informational interview, or maybe even be willing to give me a referral. So whatever it is that you think they can help you do, you can do several things. Come prepared for those impromptu opportunities to ask to know what you want to ask. Again, preparation. Are you looking for people in specific fields, industries, or companies? Have one or two quick questions about that. And you could say, hey, I'm looking to talk to people who are in this role or this field or this company. I'm really wanting to shift into this other area so that I can use my strengths and successes doing such and such. So that's like a really fast way to summarize your value. And I was wondering if you know people who might be helpful to me. Or you might say, I was wondering, I see that, you just mentioned a couple minutes ago that you've had quite a lot of experience doing just this, that what I'm interested in doing. Would you be open to setting up 20 minutes with me? Sometime in the near future, I could send you an email, connect with you on LinkedIn, and we could come up with 20 minutes together. And they're usually going to say yes. People want to help. And so that is a way to take it further. So it just doesn't stop there. And all of these things take forethought and kind of planning. So when I go into this networking event tonight, or if I do meet someone at this online workshop or seminar today, how can I make it go further? That's another big trick about making networking really an opportunity to create more meaningful connections. So there's a lot there. Again, this is a quick drive-by, but a lot there to mull over. So number 4 gets us to LinkedIn. And that is something that, getting to LinkedIn. To expand your network, most of us have a profile. And, whether it has branding in it and is attracting people with the right keywords, or engaging them once they're there with, meaningful branding comments, an about page that's like telling a story. There's a lot there that's beyond what we're going to talk about tonight. But beyond a really good profile to attract and engage people, you want to also use LinkedIn, as you might be already, to connect. And so again, how can you go beyond just, would you like to connect, and then the path goes cold? So that's really the name of the game here. And so how can you use it to your best advantage? So on the one level, if you see someone that you don't know, but you want to reach out to them, you might be hesitant because you're fearing rejection, or you're just kind of shy, you don't want to impose, sort of all the same things that we talked about when you want to, reframe your perspective. So kind of consider that too. What I hear from people is, I'm always surprised, my clients, I'm always surprised at how willing people are to, meet with me when I ask, or to give me help when I've asked, people that I don't know. So I hear that again and again. And so that's anecdotal, but people go to LinkedIn for this very purpose. And so how can you help them too? So one of my last thing here is make it mutual. So that's important as well. You're going to ask them something, but how can you help them too? So look for those opportunities again all the time. So it really works both ways and it's more meaningful for both of you. So just at the end of meeting people and maybe even making that connection, you can send a thoughtful note. Maybe you've followed their posts and you see that they really have a lot of expertise in something that you want to get into more, you want to know more about, or they look like they know everybody. So you come up with, this is what I'm going to ask them for, keep it simple, and then see if they'd be willing to talk to you. So like I say here, be bold, make the ask. The worst that can happen is they don't respond or they can't meet with you right away. But think about when you get the presentation, look back at the how to change your perspective slide. There's a lot there. So hopefully I'm talking you into really appreciating the power of networking and how it's one of the most important tools, like I said in the beginning, that you can use. It's a cornerstone of your career or job campaign. So when you really buy into that, it's then you'll probably say, you know what, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to make the ask. So this is the end of our expanding your network topic. And then we're going to talk about creating a structured approach, which is our final topic for this presentation. Before we do, again, I invite you to put a question in chat or raise your hand.
No questions at the chat right now.
Okay, thanks, Jordan. All right, let's move on to our last section. And so again, when we talked before, are you introverted, have fears, or just never done this before? I like to call this my color by number approach. So when we grew up, we probably all did those art projects where they, use number 1, that's the orange. Number 2 is the red. So this is very much like that. So I'm going to walk you through a structured approach. There's going to be scripts here, and then in the appendix, again, things that you can really put into use right away to just, make it work for you. You don't have to think through it. You just come up with what to say and then practice. So that's really what we're going to do. And we're going to look at 4 ways to manage a meeting. And so this is more when you're doing a structured approach, like the informational interviews, or you could just call them informational conversations. I had some questions I'd like to ask you. Would you be available for a short conversation? Instead of saying, would you have an informational interview with me? And it could also be just referral networking. I was wondering if you wouldn't mind talking to me about something. But the point is, this is usually used more for those formal opportunities that you create. And that, again, can be really a major cornerstone strategy for getting farther faster in your campaign. So there's 4 things here. Creating a structured approach takes the fear out of every step of the process. Using scripts and planned steps are the secrets to remaining calm and confident. Who doesn't want that? So here are the 4 steps: making the ask, preparing for the meeting, what are you going to say during the meeting, and setting the table. I like to call it setting the table. And then the follow-up after the meeting. So this is where you're going to really want to depend on your 2-minute commercial so that you can articulate what it is that you're looking for. So that's really helpful to have something, even if you haven't polished it and perfected it, have something ready to say. So the first one is making the ask. Typically we do this in email where you can, let them know who you are and how they can help. Emails, people want them to be really short. So this isn't the time to give the 2-minute written, commercial. This is the time just to say, here's what I'm looking to do. And so, if you have a referral, that's a great way to start. That's called a warm lead. Mention them right away. And if you don't, you can say, I found you, I've been following your posts on LinkedIn, and I see that you have expertise in this, and I thought you'd be a great person to talk to. And so I'm sending you this request for a short conversation. So again, adapt. Anyway, if you have a referral source, that's great. What's your purpose? Very, very short. Introduce yourself with your 2-minute profile. Now, I say that, but it should be very short. Without the story, it could just be, this is what I've been doing, and this is what I'm looking to do next. And so I have some questions around that. So it's probably like 3 or 4 sentences. Then you request the meeting. 20 minutes is pretty much the standard. Try to do it where you have a face-to-face opportunity, in person or a video conference, and then state your agenda. Even though you're not going to say, here are my questions, you definitely want to give them an idea about the type of questions that you have. So one of the most important things I put in my little tip box down here is, do not send your resume. This is not, you don't want to say, I'm looking just to get information and here's my resume. Because sometimes though, they'll say, send me your resume. But to be honest with you, today, most people just go on LinkedIn. If you have updated your resume, which is always good to do before you start this process, and your LinkedIn, because people are going to be clicking on your LinkedIn a lot more when you start this, they will go there. So it's a little too bold to send a resume. Then in the appendix, I have a sample letter of approach. So you can look at that later. I've said prepare a lot. And I'm going to say it again, because that's what really makes the difference between comfort and confident. So, here are the things to do. Pull information about that person from LinkedIn probably, so that in the beginning, you can maybe talk about them instead of, for just a minute or two as an icebreaker, instead of trying to talk about the weather or something that, you're not comfortable talking about, or you just don't want to waste those precious 20 minutes. So a really great idea is to say, hey, thank you. I was really excited that you agreed to meet with me, because I see that when I started looking at your LinkedIn, I see that you have a lot of experience doing such and such. And that's exactly what I'm looking to kind of explore more as I, transition into a new role, or just look for the next company. Again, you fill in the blanks there. So that's a great icebreaker. And you just want that to be a few minutes. But who doesn't want to hear that you're excited to talk to them? Then you've already prepared your 2-minute profile or commercial, so that you can then say what I was suggesting earlier. So before I ask you my questions, do you mind if I just give you a quick, kind of background on me, where I'm coming from and looking for? Oh, go ahead. So then you deliver that. And this is one where you can have that story. Some people memorize it, but then when you say it, you don't want to act like you memorize it. Other people are just get the gist and they can just parse it as they go along, whatever you're comfortable with. And then finally, definitely have your questions listed in advance. You can have them written out and just say, I've written out a few questions. If you don't mind, I'm just going to refer to them here. So if you're nervous about something, my advice is always just say it. I'm going to read my questions from the list I prepared, instead of you feeling nervous that you're supposed to just talk as if, you don't have them written out. So just be authentic. And then track the time. That's up to you. And it's also an important part of your presentation. You want to really impress them, at least, I don't want to put a high bar pressure on you about it, but you just want to, be calm and prepared, and show that you're on top of the time, because that shows that you're somebody who is competent, professional, cool and calm. And, you just want to put your best foot forward. So make sure that you track the time. Easy one nowadays is on your phone. And then, set it for a few minutes early so that you can wrap it up and say, I want to be mindful of your time or respectful. And then that's also gives you a moment to say, I had one more question. Do you know anyone you can suggest for me to talk to? So number 3, during the meeting. So this is what I call setting the table, which is just getting everything ready and being open about it. So one thing I found that really helps is to confirm they have 20 minutes to talk. And then oftentimes people will say, Well, actually, I have 30 minutes, or I'm on my lunch hour. We could go the full hour, or, maybe not that much, but, it could be 20, 25 minutes. I'm just happy to help you in any way you want. That's an important bit of information. If it's kind of like 20 or 25, I would try to end at 20, and then, you have that buffer. But if they say, well, we could go 30 or more, then I would still maybe say, well, it's been 20 minutes. Are you still good with going an extra 10? And then you might even just let me set that on my clock. Again, I always find it's better just to be out front with what you're doing, and just say, I'm going to take a moment here to create an alert just to make sure we don't go over our 30 minutes, and just say it with a smile. The agenda, what I mentioned I'd like to do here is spend a few minutes telling you about myself, if that's okay. And then I'm going to ask you those questions, deliver the prepared content. And then, of course, I like to say listen, because sometimes if we get nervous, we might talk and not listen. But really, when they give a response, really listen, slow down, take notes, and be respectful for that. And so the more prepared you get and the more you do it, by the way, I hear this again and again, it just gets easier. And, you might start with someone well, and you're not going to be sweating it literally later so much. It's pretty easy after you get used to this. So the never, I've already mentioned, never ask. And here are the things never to ask. One, do you know of any open positions in your company? Never ask, can you help me find a job? And then never ask, can you send my resume to the hiring manager? So hopefully you'll understand why you don't want to do that. You've told them you're meeting with them for certain reasons, and you don't want to act like the real reason I'm meeting you is to see if you'll help me get a job. So that's really going to be a major turnoff if you do that. Now, people sometimes say, yeah, I'd be happy to keep you in mind if something comes up in my company, or if I hear of anything, I'll let you know. And I've definitely heard of people doing that. So you want them to think of that. So that's number 3. And then the final one is just follow up. Now, probably everyone thinks, well, yeah, I know I should write a thank you note. But when I saw the statistic that 60 to 70% of job seekers, or people who have talked to others, do not send a thank you note to that interviewer or to that network interviewer, someone that they ask questions of, or follow through. That is really surprising to me. So just be aware that it can really help, again, make a good impression, a lasting impression, which is so important. You've worked hard to get to that interview. Now I'm talking about the informational interview, or get in front of people to talk to. You really want to make sure that you're following up, and good social and professional etiquette is part of your approach. This is just the way you do it. So nowadays, email is fine. I remember for a while there was always, is email okay? I think we pretty much satisfied that yes, do it right away. But having said that, and the next day is good. You don't have to do it the same day. That might be over eager, but next day is about right. However, if there's someone that's really important to you, you finally got to that hiring manager, or somebody else who's an important influencer, or somebody really went way out of their way for you, pull out the stationery and write a note to them if you have their address. So at the company or whatever it is, it never falls short of making an impression. And then also sometimes, like we were saying, that mutuality of networking and those conversations, maybe there was, you had an icebreaker. I noticed you do this, and you might even start with, after we're done talking here, I'd love to send you something I saw on that very topic. Or maybe at the end of the conversation, you'll say, hey, I heard in the beginning you mentioned something. I have a great article I read on this, or I know someone you might be interested in talking to as you continue on your path, blah, 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 blah. So find ways to help them if applicable. You don't have to, and certainly follow up on it. That's the topic here. Documenting your meeting in a tracker spreadsheet is a great idea, because that way you can see, who did this person refer me to? Who did that referral refer me to? Did I send that thank you note? It has so many purposes. And maybe you said, I'll let you, some people say, let me know, keep in touch with me, send me a note. And so if they say that, put a note in that spreadsheet for them, or that Word document, table, whatever you're using, that they encouraged you to follow up, and then put a date. Maybe it's 2 months. You don't want to do it too quickly, but maybe 2 months, maybe 3, but follow up. Say, hey, you had mentioned that you'd be happy to hear about my continuing, job search campaign or my career campaign. And I hope it's okay if I take a moment to let you know how it's going. So what you're doing there is also keeping the relationship warm, keeping it nurtured, and keeping it as a meaningful connection. So it isn't just a numbers game. It's really a quality game too. And remember, when you've let some of your network go cold, and then the way you regretted that, just a little bit of management keeps it really viable. And then that person too could very well think of you later. So it all is good. It all works together in an integrated way. So all the tips I've given you today, and some of the tools and examples and scripts and templates, even if you only use some of them, are just going to make it a lot easier and more successful for you, no matter what you're doing today. So any comments or questions on actually running a networking informational meeting before we kind of wrap up today? Okay, so it looks like we don't. And so just, as we kind of close down our conversation here, it's always good to leave sessions like this thinking, what am I going to do? Because it's easy, and I've been in the same, situation myself. Oh, I really learned this and that. That's a great idea. I have a couple things there I'm going to do. But then sometimes we get busy and we forgot. So something I've learned to do is just before you leave, or when we disconnect tonight, before you walk away from your computer, think about a couple action items, maybe 3 that you can commit to this week or by the end of next week. And it could be a couple things you might consider as: finish the exercises in this PowerPoint. The one is finding and building your network. That can be kind of fun. It's just filling it in. Who's a maven? Who's an influencer? Who knows everyone? And so just that kind of thing. Continue developing your branding statements. Excuse me, let me just. And then consider getting a job search buddy or coach. It's really great for accountability and support. I know a lot of people that find a lot of help there. And then finally, certainly start your networking campaign. As soon as you just have even a first draft of what you're going to talk about and your questions. It doesn't have to be perfect, and you can start with people that you know really well, and that's a great way to get going. Just start it, break the ice for yourself, and before you know it, you're going to be well on your way to building your network and getting access to that hidden job market, which we've been talking about tonight. So I hope you're walking away here with, at least some very strong actionable ideas. And I did keep putting my contact information here so that you can contact me later. If you have quick questions, something I said, I probably have something I can send you. I have a lot of guides I've created. Just feel free to contact me. You can send an email, and my email address is here. You can just send a message or a connection request on LinkedIn. Anything goes. And so I encourage you, I'd love to hear from you. And before we say goodbye here, I'll just do a quick show of the appendix that I've mentioned. So I have a networking exercise and a sample letter of approach, which is that approach when you ask someone to meet with them. So here it is. And like I say, you can create an Excel document, or you can put it in a Word table, whatever you like. who you know, and maybe everyone isn't going to be helpful, but just listing them out helps you get warmed up, and then how they can help you. And then the final one is just a template to write that email when a sample letter or sample email approach about so-and-so suggested you would be a good person to talk to. So here's an example, and you don't even have to have the questions here. This is just a template. Make it your own, adapt it for your own purposes. So that ends our presentation tonight. And Jordan, I believe that you're going to follow up. Maybe you can tell the group here what you're planning to do in terms of sending them the presentation and then the template for the positioning statement.
Sure thing. Well, first off, thank you, Susan. That was great. We appreciate your time and sharing all of those insights and tips. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen right here. So if you didn't catch Susan's information, here is my information. I can certainly get you connected with Susan. And here at the library, Susan mentioned getting a job buddy or a career coach here at the library. We have certainly been helping people apply for jobs. We've been helping people with their resumes, their cover letters. We've been hosting some practice interviews, whether you want to come inside the library or we've been doing them virtually. You can go ahead and you can email me or give me a call. And as Susan mentioned, before I move on to the next webinar, yes, I will be emailing everything that Susan mentioned during the webinar out to everyone. If it's not tonight, definitely, hopefully by tomorrow, I will be sending that out as soon as we can get that sorted out. For our next webinar, we will be presenting a set interview on Wednesday, August 4th at 2 p.m. We're going to be hosting Cindy Chestnut, who is a Director of Human Resources and Workforce Development. And she'll discuss some tips to help you prepare for your job interview so you can make a great first impression. And then here are the remaining summer webinars that we have. And it's not just limited to career webinars. We are offering business webinars, technology webinars, crafty adults, and our writers workshops. So please visit champaign.org/events for more information. And then once again, if you didn't catch Susan's contact information or my contact information, you could certainly email librarian@champaign.org, or you could chat with us. Like I said, we're still offering a lot of those appointments. We're still offering our career workshops. So we have that information here. Let me start my video. So once again, Susan, thank you. I'll check to see if we have any last minute comments in the chat, comments or questions. Thank you all for joining us this evening. And as I mentioned earlier in the webinar, we will add this recording to our YouTube channel. So I know a lot of people catch us there as well. So yeah, so if I don't see any questions, I think we could go ahead and end the webinar if that's okay with you, Susan.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much, Jordan, for hosting this. And I'm glad people could come in tonight, or people that find us on the website, that's good too. So all good information to have. And I wish everyone happy journeys in wherever you're trying to go right now in your careers.
Wonderful. All right. Well, I hope everyone has a great evening. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.